Today we speak with Wiet van Helmond in the Netherlands. Wiet regularly lectures all around the world, and his work has been published in Homeopathic Links and Spectrum over the many years of his practice. He has a special interest in treating and writing about trauma, ADHD, ASD, autoimmunity, C4 triturations, and also GEMS. What I really loved about this interview is hearing Wiet's views on how disease always has a gift it can give us if we view it as part of the larger picture. I really wish we could have spoken for many more hours, as he clearly has a very deep wisdom, which a single podcast episode is just not even going to scratch the surface of. So to learn more about Wiet, visit c4-homeopathy.com. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout podcast, where today we have the honor of having the lovely Wiet van Helmond on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Wiet.
Thank you, Eugenie. Thanks.
And did
Lovely
I
to
read?
be here.
It's so lovely to finally have you on. Did I read correctly? Does Wiet mean weed?
No. In Holland, this followed me for the first 18 years of my life, because in Holland it is associated with, but it comes from Alois. It's
Yes.
an old name, but during the ages it got shortened from Alois to Louis, and from Louis to Louis, and then you can even in Dutch you can make it shorter to Wiet, and that's where I ended up with.
Wait.
But whenever I travel, because I'm doubly cursed, because I'm also baptized. So I have, according to Dutch tradition, I also have these baptism names, and that's Maria for me. So whenever
Maria.
I'm at the border, they look at me and they go, "You're Wiet Maria?"
I
Yes.
love it. Well, because I thought I knew about the weed thing, and I thought, well, maybe it's because you're like a fourth generation like healer, natural health person in your family, and I thought maybe they just went with like that natural theme and decided to call you weed.
Yeah. No.
As the weeds are obviously, amazing healing plants. But tell us a little bit about how you discovered homeopathy, because this is like a generational thing for you. So I'm really interested to hear your story.
3 generations ago, my grandfather was diagnosed with an incredible benign thyroid growth, but it was growing so fast that within a couple of weeks it was already this size, and it had grown into the carotid artery. So he started to faint and pass out, and they went to the hospital, but this is just after the Second World War, so we are talking different operational techniques. And they said, well, it's inoperable because it's not a ball we can shout. It had all these weird edges, and they said it's too big a risk. And then he went to another hospital, and they said, yeah, we'll operate. And then on the day of the operation, they said, we've only encountered this once before, and the operation was the day before, and the patient passed on the operating table. So they said, we are not doing it again. So they just sent him home with the message that it will be, within most ideal scenario, a couple of months. And then he thought, well, I'm pretty vital. Let's do something else. And just before the war, there was a German homeopath who fled Germany and came to the Netherlands. And he started treating him homeopathically. And eventually he lived to be 99. So from that point on, the whole family was onto herbalism and homeopathy. And
Give me
the first
goosebumps.
time, but for me, whenever somebody was discussing, I went to my GP or something, I didn't know what a GP was until much later in life. And the first time I went to my GP, I was, I think, 25, because I was in a car incident and I needed proof for the insurance company that I was physically damaged. But for me, I always said, I want to be a doctor, but that was a homeopath. So I was raised on the holistic perspective, which I'm now very grateful for, because there is very little information I had to unlearn. I'd never had to look at the body in a different way and start connecting different dots. For me, holism has been the starting point of everything, which has been a great help.
What a privilege. I hope my kids, when they're big one day, can say the same thing that, this has always just been their way of life. And how lucky to not have to unlearn all these, the non-holism ways of thinking.
This whole movement that got started at the end of the 50s, at least in the Netherlands, on natural ways of healing. My family was in this movement from the very beginning. So nobody in all of our generations was vaccinated. And whatever was wrong, we always want to, reflect what is the body trying to tell you. And it's a whole different approach from what I'm hearing that all these people who've had antibiotics and all different things. I feel very privileged with this background.
Amazing. So you just went to study homeopathy. I think you studied in the Netherlands, right?
I studied in the Netherlands. At first, I thought, okay, I'll become a doctor and then I'll do the course. But at that point, if you wanted to be, a doctor, first there was this 6 years of medical school, but then you could become a homeopath in one weekend. And all these homeopaths that I already knew, they said, well, it's better to take a longer education. And at that point, we had a 6-year homeopathic training, which also included traditional Chinese medicine, a year of Ayurveda, herbalism, everything was included. But it was very intensive and for 6 years. So I thought, well, why learn something I don't agree with already for 6 years and then do a course of a weekend? I'll go for the 6 years of homeopathy. So I feel very privileged. And now this whole school is gone. And now you only have these 3 or 4 year courses, which are still very good, but it's only homeopathy. It's not 6 years of herbalism as well.
Yeah, that's Ayurvedic medicine and the TCM and the herbalism. I do think they all have their place. Hey, it's amazing. Talk to me a little bit about this. You're practicing near Europe's largest mental institute. I saw you wrote it down and I'm like, I want to know a bit more about that.
When I first started practicing, I thought, well, I'll specialize on, let's say, the age group of 10 to 18. Because I didn't enjoy much of my own puberty. So I thought if I can help just one, I'll be very happy. But eventually these people didn't show up because I think from the age of 10 to 18, whatever is wrong with you, you blame your parents and it's not your fault. And the group that kept showing up was that a few 100 meters from my practice is Europe's largest psychiatrical institute. It's a whole city. It has different areas. It has its own shopping. And it goes on for kilometers. And these people kept showing up. And in the beginning, I wasn't too happy with it because it all seemed like very heavy problematics. These borderline personality, schizophrenia. They also have several hospitals, sanatoria for different types of dementia. And none of it was very lighthearted. But they somehow knew the way to my practice. And because I think the medical establishment is not getting very far by treating them. So one of my first really good dementia cases, the treating psychiatrist, geriatrist said, oh, I see this immense jump forward. Maybe we can do something together because the psychiatrist was only working in the office for 3 days a week. And she said, well, it's empty for the other day. So move in. So we did a lot of cases together and then, one thing comes from another. And somehow that became my specialty. And a lot of it can be traced back to early trauma. So that was my other issue. And from child on, I've always been fascinated by the gemstones. And they came along. And now, but this is after years of trying to figure out what's the connection. This morning I was thinking, there is no petrified sugar. So sugar as a crystal, as a stone, it's something that only has a very recent history. It came off a plant, and a few years ago it was not present at all. While salt can be millions of years old. So we see in our Sagarum cases that whatever is causing the Sagarum state is much more recent trauma than the salt issue.
And I quickly want to add in there for our listeners. So Sagarum is the homeopathic remedy made from sugar. So when you say in Sagarum state, like the person needing a remedy made from sugar will be more recent. Okay.
And I think that another reason why we keep getting a different perspective on the gemstones is by thinking, oh, they are new into homeopathy. But if you look at Materia Medica from Hahnemann, he already had orpiment, realgar, the mercury dulcis is a gemstone, antimonium is a gemstone, silica is a gemstone.
What,
There are a lot of them.
what was that second one that you said?
Orpiment and realgar. They
I
are
don't.
both arsenicum varieties.
Okay.
And
Wow.
both are gemstones. Well, I wouldn't wear them because touching them is even toxic, but consider them stones.
Okay.
And for silica, somehow we ended up with the word flint, which means a stone that creates a spar. But if you read the proving he did, he used rock quartz.
Like a rock quartz, like the white.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
what
we've
he
got
used.
some of it on our property. Like just you just see it in the soil, like same as
Yeah,
like clear quartz. Is that the same thing?
clear rock quartz. That's
Is
what
that,
he
and that's
used.
what he used.
That's our silica.
I
So,
did not know that.
and there are other gems as well, like the salt he used was most likely rock salt, because where was he going to get sea salt? And when he did the Nature Mariaticum proving, he lived 20 kilometers from one of Germany's largest rock salt mines, which was already in use by then. So, most logically thinking is that our Nature Mariaticum is rock salt, which is actually called halite, which is also a stone.
That's
And then we see
interesting.
the trauma that causes a Nature Mariaticum state can be generations back already. Only he didn't group these remedies into families like we are doing now, but they are not new remedies. They are actually very old, and we are now coming out of this thing where I'm jumping a little bit, but for the past 250 years, homeopathy has been at its shining peak in all kinds of acute states, which has made us look very much into the absolute point of the here and the now to what needs to be treated right now. And now we have constellational work, we have shamanism, and we discover it's not just who we are now, it's where we are coming from, previous generations, the whole constellation, where do we live, which society has brought us up. It's all part of who we are. And it should also be part of the remedy we need. And then the gemstones come up again. And I think that Hahnemann already had a very good picture of this. If you read the Nature Mariaticum provings or the other stones that he did, there's a lot of information pointing towards who we are and from where are we coming.
So when you're talking about gemstones, you're not talking just about emerald or ruby or diamond or all these
Now,
beautiful.
I think that the whole word gemstone is coming from the jewelry business.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Because when you
uh,
write about gemstones, I
which
thought
is
that's what
also
you're.
making it confusing. It's stones. It's
Yeah,
stones
stones.
because certain stones are also popular in jewelry, and then they introduce different names. Like olivine is like if you grab a random hand of sand, there will be little pieces of olivine in it. But if they are larger pieces and they are more clear, we call it peridot, and it's a gemstone you can put in your ring or in jewelry. But it's the same stone. And that's happening with a lot of stones, that they have different names, which is becoming very confusing. But we should find a different word. And I don't think rock is the right word, but stone is also a bit wide.
And you've written a lot of articles for homeopathic links and various other homeopathic magazines, and you lecture around the world on this as well. How did you become interested in this first? Like, do you remember when this first started piquing your interest?
Well, I started practicing in 98, and I had the good fortune of having a full practice quite quickly. And then there were cases I thought I would really love to share them because, for instance, phosphorus. I think I wrote something about phosphorus about 20 years ago because I thought all from the materia medica, you think, phosphor, light, bubbly, champagne-like personality. And I kept overlooking all these phosphorus prescriptions because I was waiting for the wrong kind of patient. And then I got some very nice phosphor cases, and I thought maybe I should just write something to create some nuance in this image we have. And I think that was one of my first publications. And the others, I think most of them are on trauma, because wherever I am, that's pretty much seems to follow me.
Sorry, I think I should have clarified. When did you become interested in the gemstones? So because you write a lot about that specifically, hey? And do you lecture a lot about that as well?
I lecture a lot about the gemstones. I
Yeah.
think my first lecture on gemstones was 2005.
Oh, wow.
I just looked it up for something else. But as a child, because I was already surrounded by people working with homeopathy, but also with the stones. And I remembered as a child, there were certain stones that I would notice if I was not wearing them. Because I would feel, I was feeling better with them. So I would carry them and I would eventually, it took a little time, but I knew, okay, if I wear this one, this will help me with this, and this one will help me with this. So I knew which day I would need it, which one. And this kept following me. And then eventually a friend said, maybe you need lapis. And then I noticed after, I think about a month, I thought, okay, this is doing things for me. And then I got into a depression and I thought, what the hell is going on? And then I was discussing this with her and she said, well, have you considered stop wearing it? Because you need it as long as you need it and then you don't. And then I put it away and I think within a few days, this whole depression was gone. You become sensitive to it.
Mm. And with the gem remedies that you use, do you prefer like immersions or triturations, or do you have like particular gems that you
I've
work with?
tried a lot of them, and I've had this discussion with Peter Terminello because at first I thought so many people have big aggravations on the gemstones, and then they have big improvements. And I thought, well, what's this about? Could it be because I was using crushed gemstones as a source material for the remedies? And he was using immersion. So I was discussing it with Peter, and he said, well, probably immersions work more gentle. So try it because it doesn't have this element of having destroyed something. But it didn't change a lot. And I still noticed that a lot of people, when they take a gemstone, there is a big aggravation. Well, at least the period that they are considering not successful. But then big changes come. And for instance, I had a Kunzite case a few weeks ago, and this woman was always feeling whatever you're feeling, I'm feeling. And if you're happy, I'm happy. And it was for her, it was impossible to have a good mood if you were not having a good mood. So that creates a terrible dependency. And well, there were other reasons as well, but I gave Kunzite. And then she said, can you make it stop? Because I feel completely disconnected from everybody in the world. And I'm all alone and I'm in this shell. And I said, well, let's wait a little bit. I think this is a good sign. And well, it took maybe 1 or 2 weeks. And then she's reconnecting with the world, but differently. And this kind of aggravations I see a lot on the gemstones, but it makes sense because it's not acute trauma you're treating. You're treating something that probably happened a long time ago and sometimes even a generation ago.
And do you think that's something that you should warn a client about before you give a remedy? Because I'm always in turmoil about these things. I find that some remedies definitely have more aggravations than others. And so sometimes, but I don't know, because that same remedy that I find gives aggravations, another homeopath will give and they won't have any aggravations. So I do sometimes wonder if that's our own like energy that we put into it. So I feel if I don't say something to a client and something happens to them, I'm just worried that they will, like get too aggravated or too anxious or too depressed. Like I've had some clients that have taken remedies and they become really depressed and I feel really responsible. So then I kind of feel beforehand that I should tell them something, but you don't want to then put that in their head and then create that. So do
Yeah,
you feel like what do you do?
it's always difficult. And I think most of the times I just don't say anything, but I do explain when it happens.
Like as in at the follow-up, you'll say to them, that's probably the remedy.
No, I'll just say, okay, I want to make sure the remedy is working. So just send me a little update in 1 or 2 weeks. And then this is in the period where they are in this aggravation. And then I can explain it. And then it makes sense. And they can say, okay, I'll wait it out. But otherwise, if I don't say anything, if you say anything up front, it's for sure going to aggravate. But if you don't have this in-between contact moment, they will remember the suffering in 6 weeks when they do come back. and they won't see the improvement. So it's also a beautiful way of helping them to reflect on themselves, see what is happening, what is changing, what needs to change.
And actually, I think it was the lovely Jane Cacchetti that, because I was saying to you before we started recording, I've had your name pop up on my radar over the years, but just my recent, interviews with Jane Cacchetti, I think it was her that said, you have to get Vita on the podcast. But she works obviously a lot with transgenerational trauma and things, which is something that you work
Mhm.
a lot with as well. Is there anything else that you want to say about that, or how specifically you work with that? Because I was saying on an earlier interview today, it feels to me that that's like generational trauma or transgenerational trauma is like the buzzword at the moment, like hashtag trauma.
Uh-huh.
So, what does that look like in clinic, and what other sort of specific remedies do you use, and how do you treat it, and how do you work with it?
I think a lot of the parts, not so much what we have, because what we have is often it's migraine, it's a bellyache, it's dysmenorrhea, but these are clinical words. These are not the words from the patient. And when a 5-year-old is coming to you and he says, I have such terrible migraines, and you say, okay, where are they? They are here. And then you think, okay, this is something. He uses the word migraine to describe something, and he learned migraine means suffering. So this is a word he picked up. But 25 years later, we are no longer thinking, okay, which medical words or expressions are coming from the patient or are just brought up. This is part of who we've met previously. And so I like to, what Jung says in the beginning after trauma, when people are telling what happened to them, it's a battle of mythological proportions. It's good against evil, and there were these forces, and it's huge. And if you can get the patient back to this level, instead of saying, oh, I have stitching pains there and there, because otherwise it gets too clouded. So I want the patient to talk from his state. And if it's not possible to tell me about the state, I want them to tell me something that brings up the state. So there are cases where we are just listening to music together, or we are discussing a play or a book he read and has moved him deeply. And then I ask him to read me a part of the book, or I will read the book myself. But this is much more pure information than if somebody says, oh, I have a terrible headache. So this is part of my daily practice, that if somebody says, oh, I have this poem and I cannot tell it without crying, or then bring it, because I want to know why. And this is already pure information, because the poem is part of high school or school learning. You're using words, but it's resonating with an emotional state that is not. So I'm already getting more pure information. I do the same when a patient is telling me something and I think, oh, could be pulsatilla. I close my eyes. I wait for the patient to be in his state. I close my eyes and I listen. Is this the melody of pulsatilla? And then when somebody is telling me something in a very matter of fact tone, then I'm thinking, this is not pulsatilla. Something is not right. I should keep looking, because it's very easy to say, oh, everything is pointing towards pulsatilla, must be. But for me, I have to have everything complete. It has to match the image or the colors, the way people are dressed, the voice intonation, the choice of words. Everything has to match. And I think that, well, first of all, that is important for me. And to get back to, okay, where did this start? And I think that in the past 30 years, polyvagal theory has come up a lot in integrating into homeopathy. In short, our vagal nerve is the largest nerve we have, which goes from above this point to the pelvic area, and everything in between is directed by the vagal nerve. Now, the vagal nerve exists of two branches. One says, everything is fine, do whatever you need to do. Everything is safe, relax, and you can digest now. There is no threat around the corner. Everything is calm. The other nerve, of the vagal nerve, says, oh, there is a reason for panic, so be alert. And then digestion is off, breathing is accelerated, and we get all kinds of traumatic symptoms. Now, there's always one dominant. And if people are constantly in, let's say, the acute one, there is trauma, but it's often very clear. Okay, you saw something happen, there was an accident, and you can retell it. But there is an in-between state. And this is what they call neuroception. And it's like a traffic light. It's when everything is safe, it's a green light. When nothing is safe, it's a red light. And in between, you get this orange. Maybe it's safe to cross the street, maybe it's not. So you just keep one eye extra open. And a lot of people are in this field. And you see autism, which is very much in this part of the vagal nerve action, where you see this alertness on touch or things that are coming too close, because the vagal nerve is very easily taking the next step and becoming red and in full alert. So we need to address it from this point of view and calm the vagal nerve to get any results. And well, first of all, there is no life without trauma. I think trauma is what shouldn't be like disease. It's not something we should judge as something negative. There is this, I think he was German, Alfred Ziegler, who said, nature has never intended us to be healthy. We constantly need our little symptoms and our little diseases to steer us back to evolution, to progress. Only if we get off too far of the path of health, then pathology becomes big to steer you back. But if we look at it from a judgmental point of view, then you go into a split and it needs to be cut out. And it's much better to look at integration.
Such a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a different way of looking at it. And I like the work of Margaret Linehan, who's a non-homeopath, but she's a psychologist and she uses homeopathic theory without realizing it to treat trauma. And she has a beautiful way. First of all, she uses radical acceptance, which means, okay, what is needed for you to completely accept the state you're in? Because people spend years trying to become the old self. Well, something has happened to you and you will never be the old self, but that doesn't mean it has to be worse from this point on. If you want, you can have 3 treatments a day to try to become the old self again. And I think a lot of homeopaths are also prescribing on trying to become the old self. So I like the idea of radical acceptance, which is coming from Buddhism. So you look, okay, what is needed for you to move on? And you can take this with you and still have a very fruitful and interesting life, but you just accept it. And then you come to different types of prescription. Another thing she does is she's using like cures like, but then with psychology. So, for instance, if there is a borderline case coming in, and let's say they have an appointment at 4, she will let them wait until a quarter past 4, because they will get into the drama. Oh, I'm being abandoned again. Somebody has forgotten I'm coming today. So they have themselves all worked up. And then when you let them in, you overrule them with your drama. So you say, oh, I'm sorry I kept you waiting, but I just had to sedate my cat and she's been the love of my life for 15 years. And sorry, I shouldn't discuss this. Have a seat. But then you've overruled your drama with hers. And it works wonderful.
Really? In what sort of way?
Yeah.
Like...
It's like cures like. And this is what we do constantly. I mean, one of the first sensations people have with post-traumatic stress is the feeling I have experienced something nobody else has. So I'm all alone in dealing with this. So what you see, what happens is they deliver the same trauma to somebody else subconsciously to deal with and have a connection again. So you see that abuse and all kinds of trauma keep repeating themselves within the same group of people because they don't want to feel alone. And this is homeopathy. So I want to know, what is yours? What happened to you? Whose is it? Can we retrace steps too? And there is this work from Bianca Jones. She's doing transgenerational research in America. And she took a group of mice and she thought, okay, how do I give them the most perfect life possible? Perfect, healthy food, no stress, warm, comfy places to sleep, etc. Everything perfect. And then she took them out, took them to a separate cage, gave them a very minor electrical shock. And while they got the shock, she put a little almond fragrance in the air. And then she put them back. So everything was safe again. After 2-3 times, they were conditioned that this almond had an issue with electrical shocking. And for every unique scent, we have one nerve ending that can pick up the scent. Of the males that got this electrical shock, their offspring, this is only from the male. So this is not even from the female's body, this is from the male. The offspring from the males had 10 times as much neurons to perceive almond than the normal ones. And this continued. Every generation afterwards had 10 times as much. And then they added more oxytocin, so they overwhelmed them with love and affection, and then it became normal. But up to 7 generations, and then they just stopped the research, but up to 7 generations, they had 10 times as much nerves. So trauma, even from the male element, is just passed on from generation to generation. So how did I get there?
We're talking about transgenerational trauma, but I'm following where you're going. So they were kind of like pre-programmed to be really acutely aware of trauma. And I mean, they're always trying to cross-reference the studies to humans. So I kind of get where it's going with that, which it makes sense to a point that we will.
So many people are thinking, why did I marry somebody the same as my mother? And this is how we pass things on.
Wow. So when you
always see there is one generation that is dealing with me, and then the next generation is dealing with us. So now we are moving from a phase where the I was very important to a phase where the us is becoming important again. So we are slowly moving out of the age of the selfie, and now the group is becoming important again. And then we see that we need to address all this family trauma, and we are now 3rd generation, Second World War, and all other kinds of trauma, and we have to look at it.
Have you got favorite remedies that you use for that, or do you use a variety of different modalities, or is there a particular thing that a client might say that makes you think you're not dealing with their own unique trauma, but rather a generational thing?
Oh, it's a big group. I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that question. This morning I was thinking, okay, is it a group? Well, there are definitely remedies that are coming up more. And one of the ones I thought, okay, this one I'll bring up, that ADHD, for me, it's a vagal nerve issue. It's completely different than ADD, which is also a vagal issue, but completely different. ADHD, 9 out of 10 times, has this element of feeling forsaken. So you see this hyperactivity, which has only one purpose, is, am I okay if I do this? Am I okay if I do that? How do you like me now? It's completely, constantly looking for this kind of approval. And this insecurity, we see from a crystal point of view, this crystal structure is orthorhombic. They are constantly dependent on how the other is connecting to them. And I see a lot of children who need pearl. Pearl is identical, chemically speaking, to our calcarb. It's calcium carbonicum, but it's a different crystal structure, and it's from a different source. But it has this tremendous panic about, am I accepted if I do this? What do you want? How do you want me to be? Am I okay like this? This very deep need of approval, which Wilhelm Reich calls the schizophrenic type. They are always busy with, do I have a right of existence? And then they can become very creative, but they are also tormented by this basic insecurity. And I see calcium carbonicum working very well, but calcium carbonicum is less acute. It doesn't have this sharp edge that pearl has. That pearl can have aconite-like fears and panics. And I had this one boy 5 or 6, and both his parents are autistic. So these parents are constantly looking, what's the best way to raise our child? And could he have a diagnosis as well? So 3, 4 times a year, he's getting a new diagnosis. And he's constantly seeing all kinds of therapists in how to help him, how to deal with his problems, and what's the best way of raising a child. So they are seeking help from all kinds of, how do you say, healthcare professionals. And this
Oh,
child is
pediatricians.
completely lost. What is expected of me?
Mm.
And he was in practice, and his mother got into an argument with him that he needs to sit still because, well, you can imagine if you're 5-year-old
Mm.
and you're being discussed as a problem child, and your whole life revolves around how am I accepted? And he was going into a wild panic, and all of a sudden he's shouting that he doesn't want to live anymore, and he lunges for the window, and I'm on the 4th floor, and we could grab him by the leg. So luckily nothing happened. But this is the type of panic that's constantly inside. And I was thinking, what needs to heal? And then this is not Calcarb. Calcarb is not for the really fast actions. But this type of, am I accepted? Or if I'm not accepted, then life has no purpose. I have no right of existence, so I will go out the window. And he responded beautifully to Pearl. And for me, this is one of my first cases that really showed me, okay, what's Pearl about? And now it's one of my favorite ADHD remedies. And it often has this traumatic past, sometimes 2, 3 generations back,
Mm.
but you can trace it.
So interesting. I think ADHD is, it's just everywhere at the moment in our faces. I feel, especially since COVID, it feels like it has massively increased, and so many adults getting diagnosis as well. And so I'm always up for any more tools in the toolbox to help me with clients who struggle with this because,
Well, I think
uh,
if you're already lingering in the world is unsafe and I'm not accepted, you can compensate by having some friends, etc. And then if COVID happens and the whole world becomes unsafe, then you're just
Mm.
pushed, and it becomes a constant red light. And then I see a lot of, but like you said, after COVID, so many children reacted very badly to the lockdowns.
Mm.
I also see cases that were blossoming. Finally, no more crowds, just me and mother. But for a lot, it was very traumatic.
Mm. I am going to have to go look at Pearl a bit more. I've prescribed it a couple of times for women because, the thing I love about Peter Tomanello's book is he's got these gorgeous graphics in the book, gorgeous artwork. And there's this
Yeah.
woman that's standing there in this oyster shell. And I find it so
Uh-huh.
easy to kind of like caricature remedies. Hey, and so I just haven't thought of that as a remedy for kids. But I need to, you'd think after 12 or 13 years of practicing, I would stop doing that. But I still find myself doing that where I'm like caricaturing a remedy and think this is a remedy for women or this is a remedy for this or that. But it's, clearly not. I need to
No,
look
but
at
it,
it.
it helps. I mean, that's what I say. If a patient says, oh, this is my state, and this is a poem or a painting that belongs to it, then this is much more pure information than basic materia medica. So I think if you can remember a remedy through such an image, it's much more 3-dimensional than
Mm.
remembering a bunch of keynotes.
That is true too. That is true too. I wanted to ask you about C4 triturations as well. And there's something that I wish with our homeopathic labeling that we would do that more often, especially as more homeopaths are becoming aware of C4 and C5 and upwards. I wish that when we label our remedies, it would be, say, arnica. They say C3 arnica 30C or arnica 3C-30C or something like that, so you know if it's a 3C trituration or, sorry, a C3 trituration or C4 or C5. I wish we would start using that labeling in our profession. I think it's very helpful
Yeah,
because you do want to know what.
I completely agree. And
Mm.
I think that, again, you see, it's the same as with Hahnemann during his time, this look at health and who we are, and not just think of, oh, he needs leeches or he needs a mercury enema, that he was looking at the bigger picture. The same thing was happening in art history. And now, if we look at the age of the selfie, the C4 is at the core of my spiritual being. Why am I here? But the discovery of C4 was already from Hahnemann. This is nothing new in his Materia Medica on Aurum. He triturated Aurum to C4 level. It worked so much better, and he never went back to the C3.
Interesting.
And it took us 250 years to discover this one line.
That's
Well, this is
amazing.
the first thing he wrote about Aurum. Well, he had to start somewhere. So he thought, okay, I've triturated a couple of times. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Well, 3 is enough for most remedies. I'll stick with 3. And then with Aurum, which was his first trituration, he actually went higher. And then he said, okay, that's better. And C5, C6 are much more in the collective area. So it makes a lot of sense that while with constellational work, etc., we are working more on the bigger picture, that now C5, C6 are coming up more.
I think it's already so tricky with all our potencies and stuff. If we like started training homeopaths about, the importance of using each different remedy at each different trituration level, I think the homeopaths will go, that's it, I'm out.
That's the
But
response I get a lot. But I learned very early on, I had this case and I thought, well, this is arnica. Yet I've given arnica, and why is it not working? And then I phoned John Morgan and I said, okay, how is it made? Maybe something in the process there. And then he explained it. Well, arnica is made from the tincture. And then I thought, wait a minute. Hahnemann said, 6th edition, organon, triturate. I said, and when did you triturate? No, it's made from the tincture. We potentize the tincture. So I said, okay, I'll phone different pharmacies. And then I called another pharmacy and they said, no, we make it from tincture. I thought, okay, let's find a pharmacy that triturates it and then potentizes it. And then my arnica case was solved.
that's
So,
incredible.
yeah. And from that point on, I started thinking, okay, maybe we need to look at how these remedies are made.
Mm.
And
That's
it's such a big difference.
I really would love to see that more and more with our labeling, and also even like where our remedies are sourced. I so often prescribe, say like pert ant or folliculinum, and there'll be conflicting information about where exactly it's sourced from. Like folliculinum, for example, I've heard some people say it's estrogen, but where does that estrogen come from? And then I heard somebody else say, no, or I read somewhere else that's actually synthetic estrogen, that it's actually made from the contraceptive pill. So it's and I mean, to be fair, we've got like 8,000 plus, whoever knows how many remedies we have, but it would be good if we had better data keeping of what exactly it is that we're giving so that we can get more exact and precise results.
Yeah, and I think there's also a difference if you use, let's say, arnica, and the plant has grown in an artificial environment, not even in contact with the soil, but on these
Hydroponics.
hydroponics, and in a glass cage, so no direct sunlight. That's different than taking one from the Alps. It's not the same. So I completely agree. We should retrace where is what coming from.
And I feel like a lot of our remedies almost need to be redone, especially I feel like with pathogens, like a lot of our nosodes and things. It would be good if a lot of them were triturated to C4 or C5, especially with the results that I'm seeing with Andreas's strep tilch, is that the C5 is having such amazing results. And I wonder if we did that with more of our nosodes, that actually maybe collectively we need higher triturated remedies now. So I think a lot of our remedies need to be kind of redone. I don't know. I know it's a huge task, but
that's becoming more and more difficult because every nosode, at least in Europe, now has to be sterilized before you are allowed to make a remedy of it. So a lot of the vital essence is gone already.
Yeah.
And I think we also need to adjust our perspective. I mean, nobody is proudly saying I'm a syphilitical person.
Yeah.
This is better say you're psoric. There is so much judgment, the miasms and on these nosodes, that we are not getting everything out of it that we can. It's very healthy to be in a syphilitical state. And I think that the miasms are cyclic. So you go from psora to psychotic to syphilitic, and then the acute miasm comes and you go into a new cycle and you've developed something. A lot of the times people are steering towards health by trying to reverse it, going from syphilitic to psychotic to psoric. But for me, that doesn't make sense at all. It's much better to go into something syphilitic. And as Andreas Björndal says, syphilitic miasm is learning what can die, which can be very healthy. I mean, that's evolution. Taking the next step is learning what can be let go of. But if we are steering away from this, there's no growth. It's much easier to say, okay, let's support the syphilitical miasm into an acute,
Mm.
and then something grows, and then it's gone.
I've heard that mentioned before. I think it's something I need to sit with a little bit more and digest, like how miasms are actually a way of evolution for us. And I
Yeah.
wish I could remember who it was that said it on the podcast, but the first time I heard of it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That it's kind of trying to pass on that message, I guess, in the same way as the studies with the mice, where the mice are, they're evolving these extra senses because they're learning in the following generations. So I guess our miasms are there in a way as well, like teaching us.
It teaches us. And this is polishing the diamond. And by trying to undo it, I think you're doing more damage than by learning from it and moving on.
Mm. I had a chat with
But a lot of
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying I interviewed Roland Gunther earlier today, and your conversations, I have to keep on like remembering who said what. And it's kind of like, when you have like two initial consultations back to back and they're similar kind of people with similar stories, I sometimes think I have to remember which one told me what. But I feel like this conversation with you is very similar to the conversation with Roland this morning. And I'm going to have to schedule your episodes one after the other because they really interweave very, very nicely with each other. It's actually really cool, and it's totally coincidence that you're both on the same day. But you're mentioning similar type things with the C4 and trauma and these sorts of things. It's confusing me a little bit because I'm like, who said what again? Very
I
cool
had the
though.
same. I started practicing in '98, and then after a couple of years, I thought I'm only seeing psychiatric cases. I have to, because it becomes difficult. That were you the one with the domineering mother, or were you the one with? So I thought let's do something else. So for 2 days a week, I rented an office in a completely different spot. I thought, okay, I'll start practice where I live, which was a community where I think 90% of the population was over 65. So after a few years, I had hundreds of arthritic and menopausal issues. But then I discovered eventually I'm still treating trauma cases because this is what it all comes down to. There's trauma in every case, only it develops differently. But we have to get to the root of the issue and then treat it.
When you were saying at the start of the interview about working in the psychiatric unit and you're saying most of them are there because of trauma, I was about to say, I'm sure all of them are there because of trauma, but I mean, there's that small percentage that are actually there because of like medically induced, like that, might have had a drug overdose or something like that and might have gone into like psychosis. But I mean, I guess that's trauma in itself, but like trauma it's just everywhere. I mean, and then at the same time, we wouldn't incarnate into this world if we didn't. Like, we need the trauma to help us grow. It's very uncomfortable.
To help us grow. And they also, in this psychiatric city, they all had a department for children. And with children, this is the big market pharmaceutical wise. So they are always thinking, what could be the next big remedy? And then about 10, 15 years ago, they were giving Haldol to children. And they said, this is doing miracles. All these children with ADHD and that cannot sit still and they have violent impulses, and now they sit still perfectly. And then I thought, well, they will sit still because it's a vegetative state. They are not even, I mean, they could be in school for 10 years and still don't know the alphabet. So this got me worried. And luckily, there were more and more parents who noticed, wait a minute, one of them is moving out and he was under treatment with homeopathy. My daughter will also get homeopathy now. So there were chances, but it's a lot of trauma. And there is a big group of heavily motivated mothers behind it. This is not individuals, luckily. And we can do so much for these children. There are so many children either traumatized by ADD or some kind of other autistic spectrum diagnosis. And it doesn't help to get the diagnosis. I think we all have a way of connecting with the world, but by labeling it, it's not improving it.
Mm. To be fair, I don't know what your schooling system is like over there, but over here, I don't think our schooling system really helps because, yeah,
No,
the kids they're not outside playing, doing things with their hands, like being made to sit still for so many hours a day. I don't know. It's, yeah, thank goodness for homeopathy is all I can say because the world just
my,
feels
my,
like it's in a real
but when
mess.
my daughter went to school for the first time, she said, I'm the only one without a medical diary. There were special breaks during the day where all the children go to the teacher and they get their medication. And she felt left out because she was the only one without. So this tells us something about how much over medication and suppression that is going on. And now in Holland, years ago, they already created laws that make it impossible to have small schools. Every
Mm.
class is 30, 32 people, and every school is about 2,000. While when I was young, we had schools of 50 people, 60 people. They were much smaller. I don't think anybody is blossoming in a 4,000 children school. This is too much stimuli.
It's way too much. I often say that as well for the parents that come and say their kids have got ADHD. And I'm like, if I was in a small classroom with like 30 other people, forced to learn something that I'm not interested in and where I'm sitting down all day, then yeah, of course you're going to be diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
It's a pretty hard one. One more thing that I want to ask you, Vit, because you wrote something. You said we rarely become sick on our own. Usually there is a social component. What do you mean by that?
For me, sitting in this room, very little pathology will surface. It's from social interactions, it's from the family I'm coming from, relationship failures. This is where pathology is coming from. 9 out of 10 times, whatever is happening to us, there is a social component to it. And this is very often not emphasized enough that this is where growth opportunities lie. And it's also the only miasm that has very little social element is psora. Because psora, I don't have enough money to go out, I'm not attractive enough to have friends, and this is already a reason to withdraw. The other miasms all have a social component. So I used to ask only children, and now I ask adults as well. I say, okay, let's say we are writing the big Eugenie manual, how to deal with Eugenie. And this is, you can give this to people up front before meeting you. What should be in there? And
Oh, that's a
people
good
tell you,
question.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And people tell you great things. I used to do the same with a child psychologist, taught me that at the end of the consultation, to avoid being very medical, say, okay, I can put 3 wishes in this very little pill. What do you want? What do you want it to do? If it could do anything, and you write down the child's 3 wishes, and then the parents came, and you do the consultation, and then at the end they said, "And my wishes? Are you not going to ask about my wishes?" And I said, "Okay, I'll write it down." And the interesting thing is, somebody will make an appointment for hemorrhoids. You discuss hemorrhoids for an hour, and then you say, what do you want your wishes to be? Ah, I want it to be this and this and this and hemorrhoids. Yeah, that's somewhere fifth, sixth, maybe. And then I think, okay, we'll retake the case now. It's a great way of going to a wide point of distance and getting into a bird's eye perspective.
Mm, mm.
Another issue or item I use is PayPad. I don't know if whoever is using it, I can explain it in a few minutes.
Yeah, what is it?
It's a person picking an apple test. It's a DSM acknowledged test, and as all art is autobiographical, you cannot draw something that is not about you. So I say, okay, I want a drawing that has somebody who is picking an apple. So there should be the person and the apple. And there should be a movement that he's picking an apple, not just, oh, look, there is an apple tree. There should be picking an apple. And it has a lot of, it has a dynamic energy. There is how much effort do I put into this? Is it, and I'm not filling in anything else. So you get these drawings of people that are in a thunderstorm and it's almost impossible to get to the tree. And there are other people that the tree is like this high and they are just getting it. And then it's a great way of having a perception of how somebody is living his life. Is there a murderer behind every tree? Or are the apples this big, very easy to get, or lightning coming down? It's a very easy way to get to the core of a remedy.
That is cool. I can see that working in that psychiatric unit that you would have picked up some good tricks.
Yeah.
I think I read that you were saying like a lot of them couldn't speak really, so you had to become really good at observing as well. Was like, is there anything else that you can say about that? Like about your time working in the psychiatric unit?
One of my first really severe dementia cases was a woman who she was completely into apathy. There was no response. And the family asked me to prescribe something. So I said, well, this is very close to the practice. And as there is no movement, whenever there is a 10-15 minute break, I will just ride over, observe. And whenever a remedy comes up, I'll let you know. And I was sitting there, I think, for the third or fourth time. And whatever I was doing, opening windows, closing the curtains, there was no interaction whatsoever. And then one day, her daughter came in and she walked over to her and she said, "Hi, Mom, eyes open." And I thought, wait a minute. So something in this physical connection is getting her out of this state. And she still wouldn't reply, but you could see a very faint smile and the eyes would open. So I thought, okay, this is oxytocin. It's safe to be here and I'm connecting to you. So this is doing something. So I asked her, the daughter, I said, what was your mother like? Oh, she said she was always taking care of everybody and herself would come in last. So I thought, okay, this has a lot of luck issues as well. Luck has oxytocin. So I just gave oxytocin. And I think within 2-3 weeks, she was sitting up and having conversations. And after a couple of months, she was joining in conversations in the communal room. And we had great conversations about music and politics. And her mind would go very clear. I remember that she was saying, "Oh, if you like this opera, Bellini's Norma," I remember. And she said, "You should listen to the Maria Callas version from 65 and not the one from 67. The one from," and she had all these details in her mind. And we would have a discussion. And then at the end of the hour, she would make a mistake. And then I would think, not everything is clear. She would say, "Oh no, politics, terrible." And then she would mention a prime minister from 40 years ago. So I thought, okay, now we're off. But up to that, you could have great conversations with her again. And this was from a totally apathic state. So now I'm much more into observing people, also with MS that are just lying in bed, or paralytic cases. You get so much more pure information from just sitting and seeing how they interact with the world, or how the world interacts with them. What are they responding to? You get very pure information. And with cases like children, when I get stuck, I ask, am I allowed to visit their class? I'll just sit in the back of the room and I'll observe them in class for an hour. And you get great information.
You are clearly a very, very dedicated practitioner.
Well, it's frustrating to have no result. I think, especially with post-traumatic stress, ADHD, autism, this is just something you have, and you'll be medicated because there's nothing to solve it. And it's very motivating for me to find some sort of solution so people do move on. And if it means, well, going to a class and observing, it's so much more pure information than whatever. I mean, I'm the same way. When I'm talking about my children, I'm positive, to say the least. So, and you don't observe everything. But just sitting in class for an hour, you get much more information.
So interesting. Now, you are lecturing all over the place because you're actually in a B&B in Turkey at the moment, about to do 2 days of lecturing. Where are you lecturing?
well, it's Friday now. Saturday and Sunday, I'll be lecturing in Istanbul on the gemstones.
Amazing.
And
At a homeopathic school or whereabouts?
I think it's connected to the university because homeopathy is university taught here.
Oh, wow.
And then in 3 weeks, I'm lecturing at the Sofia School for Homeopathy, also
Where
on gemstones.
Whereabouts is that? I feel like I've heard that name before.
Bulgaria,
Oh, in
the,
Bulgaria.
the capital of Bulgaria.
Okay, wow. You're going to have to give me details of the people in Istanbul and Sofia because I don't think I've had interviewed any homeopaths from either of those
Oh, you should.
places. So
You should.
I'm trying
You
very
should.
hard to get a homeopath from all over the world to interview.
Yeah, no, I'll gladly. I was amazed at the level of homeopathy that is here. It's
Amazing.
that
Okay.
this is the conception we have in Western Europe that whatever is happening in the East is not worthwhile. And I'm when I got here, I'm amazed that these people have connected different things, and yeah,
It's sometimes nice when
it's
there's a
a
bit of
very high level of
isolation.
homeopathy.
Oh, sorry, I think the connection just dropped.
Well, it's the delusion we have of isolation, but it's people are much more connected than in the West. There's a lot of creativity here, and homeopathy is on a very high level.
I kind of mean like if there's ideas developing different to somewhere else, because it's so easy if we're all connected all the time to have kind of the same ideas. But if you have maybe language barriers or things that are causing ideas to go off in a different direction, that's actually really nice, especially with
That's a big
homeopathy,
issue.
which
Language is a big issue, but
mm,
I was thinking to myself, um, this is just an idea. Okay, what is nature Mariaticum? Because this is what I was studying. What was Hahnemann using in his proving? Okay, it was originally a gemstone. Okay, what does nature Mariaticum mean to us? It gives us the opportunity that this was my solution, my eventual thought
mhm.
that it gives us the opportunity to have a deeper connection coming from the hunter-gatherer system. We were able to connect deeper and live together instead of this is one small group of people that is hunting and gathering and moving all over. Bigger communities would be able to be formed because now we are, instead of I don't want to be hurt and I also don't want to hurt you, so we will live very far apart. No, we could also live together and have some form of unity. I thought, okay, this is what Natura Muriaticum is bringing us. If that is true, you should be able to find old cities near the ancient salt mines. So I thought, okay, if this is the theory, well, Hahnemann, of course, was living 20 kilometers from a salt mine, but the oldest salt mine in Europe it's in Bulgaria, and it's almost next to the third oldest city in the world, and it's the oldest city in Europe. So there's a connection there, which I mean I'm in Turkey. If you look at historically speaking, the first appearance of tuberculosis was thousands of years ago in the eastern part of Turkey. So I was thinking, okay, what does tuberculosis represent? There is this eternal longing and there is discontent. You cannot have one without the other. So discontent, longing, desire to move. The grass is always greener somewhere else. So I thought, okay, let's figure out where the wheel was invented. In the same historical period in the eastern part of Turkey. That if you look at history from a bigger perspective, it's almost in the same second that the wheel was invented at the same place as the first tuberculosis case. I mean, you can never scientifically connect these two, but I think it's an interesting coincidence.
It's amazing. And it's one of those things, once again, just about asking the right questions. And also, I can see that you have a really unique way of looking at things. And maybe it's because of this, there's generations of being brought up with viewing the body as whole. And if there are symptoms, then asking why are those symptoms there instead of suppressing those symptoms. And it's really clear that way of naturally thinking that way from a young age, you're instead of just saying, "Oh, that's a bad disease," you're actually okay. What is that teaching us? And same like what you're saying with the miasms, like what is that teaching us? Instead of just trying to suppress it or push it away. I really like that.
It reminds me, I had a case of a woman who had a very big boil on her thigh, and she wanted to do something homeopathically with it. And then I gave her something and it disappeared. And then she said, I think I want it back because this was like a thermometer. She said, whenever I knew I had too much stress, the boil would come up and I would know how to relax. I canceled some appointments and it would disappear again. And now it's gone. And I'm constantly sitting on a time bomb. What will happen next?
Basically using that as a way to kind of regulate. I find it with my cold sore. I started getting cold sores 3 years ago after being in touch with somebody who had the COVID vaccine. And I find them now, they pop up right here. And I'm like, I've been doing too much again. I need to relax. I need to calm down. I'd rather it wasn't there. I'd rather there's different ways for me to know when I've been doing too much. But clearly I'm not listening to my body. So it's using it on my face. It's like, I'll just put this on your face to remind you that you need to calm down.
Yeah. Now I understand. I would also worry if it's gone, but the stress hasn't diminished or you're not dealing with stress differently. Then people start to think, oh, I'm a sitting time bomb. And what else? Something can else surface.
Exactly. Oh, Viet, I think we can talk lots more. I've just got somebody else I'm going to interview today. So it's a it's a full day of interviewing here in the caravan park in Esperance,
Yeah.
one episode after the other. Uh, but I see you've got a website here, c4-homeopathy.com by the looks of it. Is there anywhere else? Like, I think I saw you on LinkedIn as well. I'm not on LinkedIn myself, but I think I saw a link there. But where else can people find you if they want to get you to come and speak at their school or if they want to have a consultation with you? Like what's best to get hold of you?
I think the easiest way is through the c4homeopathy.com. I am working on it on another site, but it's not finished yet. But LinkedIn, I'm just new at it. So
Okay.
I'm
I could never
every now
figure
and
it
then I
out.
think I should check.
Uh,
You can connect through the email, which is on the site. And usually I respond very quickly. So
Amazing. It was lovely to chat with you, Viet. Thank you
it
so
was
much for
great
your time.
talking to you.
And
Great talking to you. Come to Europe.
oh my goodness, it is so high on my list. All the best with your lecturing the next couple of days. I'm sure you can probably do it with your eyes closed. Have a wonderful time.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day and I hope to see you again sometime.
So bye.